You're listening to Somewhat Frank with me, Frank Gruber. After working in the corporate world for a decade, I decided to blaze my own path by co-founding Tech Cocktail, which helped catalyze local startup communities and eventually turned into TechCo Media, a site which grew to millions of readers and was eventually acquired. Over the past decade, I've interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs and thought leaders from some of the fastest growing and most successful companies in history. And along the way, I've learned amazing lessons from my experiences. So we're going to talk about startups, tech, innovation, and their intersection with personal life, and anything else on Frank Gruber's mind. So let's get started being Somewhat Frank. Somewhat Frank is produced with the help of Established, my new company.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Somewhat Frank podcast. I'm your host, Frank Gruber. I hope you're all doing well. It's been a little while since we've been back here, and I've got my co-host here today, Johnny Good Times Guidos, fellow fall lover of September and everything that has to do with the autumn season. Hope you're doing well. Johnny, how are you?
Hi, Frank. Good. I'm happy to be back with you here. And yes, fall is my favorite season by far. There's a little crispness in the air. Football's back, even though it's a little weird this year, a little different. But for the most part, things are looking well. Things are good.
Good. Yeah, definitely it's interesting to see the sports back, empty stadiums and whatnot. It's good to see that, something to distract us from what's been pretty much a dumpster fire of a year. So something to kind of distract us is important, I feel like.
Yep, totally agree. It's been an interesting year, but like probably a lot of people out there trying to make the best of it.
Totally. So, we're Big Ten supporters from our Purdue days and Northwestern too, but what are you feeling like? They're coming back with the Big Ten, it sounds like. They canceled it initially, and now they saw the other places, other conferences come back, and now they're coming back October 24th, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and I are in the startup and in the business world, let's call it, and I'm fascinated by how quickly some of these big organizations like the Big Ten or the NFL or whatever the case may be have been able to shuffle things around due to the ongoing issues of the world, let's call it, and the pandemic, right? So I think October 24th is the beginning of the Big Ten season, and I'm really excited to get back to a little sense of normalcy. And hopefully the Boilers can do well. I'm also interested, I haven't seen anything about this, but I know a lot of players decided to opt out of the season. I'm curious as to how this, moving forward with the Big Ten season affects their eligibility and those sorts of things.
Yeah, that is really interesting because they've only got a short window to work with, right? So here we are, like they've got maybe 3 to 5 seasons, maybe 6 if they can do a double red shirt or something, or sit out or something like that. But basically, it's a very short window of time where they have to basically get their reps in on the field, and obviously puts them in a tough position if they want to get drafted, if that's the path that they've been following for their entire lives, right? So sure. I definitely see both sides of it there. With the other side is obviously just safety, right? Like they want to not get sick, and obviously we shouldn't downplay the fact there's as of today over 200,000 coronavirus deaths in the United States, which is absurd and ridiculous. And obviously don't want to get too much down that rabbit hole because I can go for a long time, but it doesn't need to be that way. And obviously if everyone just wears some masks and be careful, we'd be in a better situation. So, so that's the other side of it. We still are dealing with a pandemic. So I get why people are sitting out and opting out and whatnot. There's still stuff going on. I mean, I don't know if you saw it, Notre Dame basically had to cancel this weekend because they had a bunch of people with coronavirus.
Yep, I did know that because you texted me at about midnight last night, informing me.
It was prep work. It was prep work for today. Now You're informed, and now you'll know. You probably had a good night's sleep on that.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I saw that, and I would imagine, hopefully it doesn't happen, but similar situations popping up in the in the near future.
Yeah, I think the main thing that's worked in sports in general has been the bubble, right? If you get people to live in a bubble for a short period of time, as much of a, disservice it is to those athletes, it gets them on the field and keeps them healthy. It's worked in the NBA, it's worked in some of the other sports that are using the bubble, and you're seeing like in baseball they didn't use the bubble, and you had teams like the St. Louis Cardinals and others basically lose like 2 weeks of the season, and they're not. And then because of it, they had to play like a ridiculous amount of 7-inning doubleheaders to kind of make it up and try to be even. And it definitely affects not just them, but all the other teams too, because they had to play the doubleheaders, which, wears people out. So long story short, there's no perfect solution. It's good to see him playing. It's kind of a weird year. There's going to be an asterisk next to everything related to the sports this year because it's just their statistics and everything aren't going to match up with what a normal season would be like. But it's good to get him out there, and obviously, like I mentioned earlier, a good distraction.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't know if you saw this year's season of Hard Knocks on HBO, but it was very interesting to see how, these companies or these teams are multi-billion-dollar companies in themselves, and the way that they are, they're tracking contact between players and people on their staff, and they're testing.
Tracing.
Yeah, exactly. The amount of testing that's going on and the measures they've taken to limit risk, within their organizations. And I know that I was watching either Monday Night Football or Sunday Football a few weeks ago, and the announcer, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I was interested to hear that the NFL has done, at the time, they had done 44,000 tests and only had one player test positive for coronavirus, which is surprising.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how some of these companies and teams
organizations are moving so quick. Yep,
right.
Definitely, they're adjusting and trying to be flexible, and make it work. But with that, we were 73+% completed with the 2020 year, which has, like I mentioned earlier, has been a little bit of an up and down battle with a lot of different things. So
sure.
Everyone out there, just keep your head up, keep moving forward one day at a time, and we should be okay. So with that, I do want to mention we're going to take a brief moment of silence for the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who recently passed away last week. She fought for freedom and equality for a lot of Americans, things that people didn't realize that probably today that are even we all take for granted, I think, and a lot of people take for granted just because they don't know the history of it. So I definitely want to take a moment. So let's do that real quick. All right. So with that, let's talk about some good things happening out there in the world.
Yeah, let's get into it. Everybody needs a little bit of an uplift here, I think. So, and I know one of the things that we always talk about on the podcast here, and one of the things you just love to do personally, is celebrating people in your network that are doing interesting and positive things. So what do you got going on?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of an older one because honestly, I took a break. I don't know if you guys noticed, if you're listening, we took a little bit of a pause for the summer. We were doing okay, doing monthly or every couple weeks, and then things just got busy. So it's been a little while. So these are a little bit backlogged. So apologize for the delay, but still want to celebrate some of these folks. So Tamara Weinberg, she's actually she's a coronavirus survivor. She got coronavirus early, and she wrote about it. She's got a Medium page at Tamara. So if you go to Medium at Tamara, you can read more about it. But so she's got some about that, and obviously that caused a lot of depression. And then what I like is the positive side of it is that she came out and now created her own fragrance, and she documents that out on the internet too. So it's called Tamar, which creatively is named after her. So check that out, and congrats to her for getting that going and getting through the ups and downs of what's been a rough year. Genevieve Thiers, she's the founder of Sitter City, which was one of the early childcare firms where you can go find sitters and whatnot, based out of Chicago. It got acquired, so it got acquired by Bright Horizons. So congrats on that. It's a long journey. It's that she was at the helm for a while. She hasn't been at the helm for a little while, but she was for a long time leading that company, and obviously had success there. So congrats to her. Kara Golden, who's the founder of Hint Water, that tasty water that tastes like cucumber or some other fruit. She just raised another $25 million for Hint Water, and also has a new book coming out October 20th. It's called Undaunted. So got a lot going on with Kara's life. She's doing great, and congrats to her. And then we've got Ben Parr, who was a early Mashable contributor and then turned VC / entrepreneur, is with Octane AI, and he's got a pretty interesting article out there in Forbes about their company, Octane AI, and what they've been up to. They had a lot of ups and downs, and it was a chatbot company. And anyway, you got to go read it. They finally raised money and are doing well, but it wasn't an easy direct path journey. So love to hear those stories, and you don't hear about those as much. You usually hear about the success part of it and not the dark part. So good to hear that they're keeping it real over there and are continuing to move forward. And then one that just came out yesterday, Neil Sales Griffin, who has been an entrepreneur and I think he even ran for mayor, right, of Chicago, is now joining Math Ventures, Venture Partners as a venture partner. And so congrats to Neil, and I love following along his journey out of Chicago. So I'm sure there's more things happening in the world that I missed. So if you got things, send them my way. I'd love to include them and celebrate your successes. So with that,
good stuff, Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember meeting Neil, I think back in Vegas at one of your events when he was involved with Coder Academy, I think it was.
Yep, Coder Academy, that's right. So he was
nice
teaching
guy.
people how to code. Yep, really cool. So he's done a bunch of different things, and good to see him continue to move ahead. Now he's going to be looking at startups and investing.
That's awesome. Transitioning a little bit here, I know that, both you and myself are lifelong learners. Is there anything that's been in the news or you've been reading lately that's been interesting to you?
Oh, yes. And this, again, a little bit backlog, but I don't know if you saw last week, out of nowhere, this company, I say out of nowhere, but it's still a Warren Buffett-backed company, but out of nowhere in Silicon Valley, this company called Snowflake basically IPO'd and doubled, it was the biggest IPO for a software company debut ever, which is pretty phenomenal. There's been a lot of software companies that have IPO'd. So there's a bunch of articles about it. You can go look up Snowflake, and it's not that it's snowing outside, or it's not about Frozen, the movie. It's about this company, and learn more about it. Pretty good stuff. But
Sure.
speaking of Frozen, did you see that, by the way? Did you see the Snowflake IPO?
I did, and I think the reason why it was so newsworthy is, like you said, it kind of flew under the radar, and interesting to see what their future holds. I know that, like you said, Warren Buffett had backed the company, which I think that, sometimes in these situations, the IPO turns into a little, or the investing for that matter, is a little bit of a popularity contest. And when, investors see someone like Warren Buffett interested in a company, a lot of people can fall in line. Also, some of it has to do with market volatility and those sorts of things. But it was like the recipe for the perfect storm to have such a high IPO. But very interesting to see how they'll compete with, other big data or repository companies like AWS or Azure or whatever the case may be. So
Right.
Good stuff there.
Yeah, and speaking of Frozen, I'm fascinated with blue zones. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's those zones that people live the longest, and there's a bunch of them. Not a bunch of them, just about a handful of them all over the world. And they've been kind of diving into looking at them more closely and why people are more prone to live longer there in longevity. And they're looking at nutrition, and they're looking at relationships and activity and all that. So got some articles I've shared about that in the past. There's a new one I just shared about nutritional tips that are coming from blue zones, and kind of bring us to light the idea of, do we want to live forever? And I noticed that there's a company that's out there trying to preserve the dead. And I remember, it just reminds me of back in the day. For years, I remember hearing Walt Disney has been frozen and he's going to be brought back someday. And now it's kind of coming to fruition. I guess there's continued advance in technology. So
interesting. Well, a lot of the vampire movies that are out these days, the vampires it seems to be a burden to live forever. So I don't know about all that, but
right.
It's
just
interesting
weird
to see that medical technology is moving that direction.
It's a weird dilemma. Like all of a sudden you come back and all your family's gone or whatever if you didn't freeze them too, right? So it's this weird situation. It's relationships, are important to people, and a lot of that be gone. So interesting to think about if you got time to ponder while you're maybe taking a cold shower, because cold showers are supposed to help you in your body. And do you take cold showers?
No, I do not.
I took one today. It was cold, definitely cold. And but it's supposed to help you. And I shared an article recently about the why. But experts are saying you should do it. So give it a try sometime if you're feeling, like you should.
Oh, I've taken cold showers in the past. However, I prefer to take a little bit warmer showers. But I guess if there's some health benefit to it, I should maybe change it up a little bit here.
Definitely. We'll give it a try. It's tougher to do in the winter. I feel like summer is the time for the cold shower for me. Today I did a workout. I ran outside, and it was, it makes it easier when you're like hot to take a cold shower
Sure.
than warm for me
Well, they
anyway.
say, inflammation leads to a number of different, let's call them health issues or diseases, whatever you want to call it. So
Right.
I know I know some people in the past that they actually have those, what do they call, like those cryogenic chambers that they
Oh,
sit
wow.
in for 10 minutes in the morning or something like that. And it really
Interesting.
supposed to reduce. Yeah, it's crazy because when you were back in the day, you heard about athletes that were using that stuff, but I know that it's a little bit more mainstream these days, and you can actually, reduce a significant amount of inflammation sitting in one of those, and one of those chambers every morning. And the difference is that that's cold air versus cold water. So the cold air, there is a difference in how your body is and how you're able to handle those things, just given that if it's water or air or whatever the case may be. So
Right. No, that makes sense. I was just thinking, so what happens with the cold shower is it actually kills the bad mitochondria. So it's
mm,
basically killing off the bad stuff and trying to regenerate. So you'll regenerate the good stuff. And so cell-wise, your cells are in better shape.
oh
And
wow.
and so I think that's what it's supposed to do, if you do it long enough. And I guess you do it enough in general. So
Sounds good. I
yeah.
believe you.
So something to think about. So there's been a lot of people working from home right now, still because everyone's working remotely because of the pandemic, and so you're seeing a lot of interesting articles and things, people speaking up about the fact that maybe you don't need to necessarily live in those hot spots, especially in the tech industry. Like, do you need to live in Silicon Valley anymore? People have been migrating from Silicon Valley to Austin and other markets for years, and now it's kind of accelerated a little bit. And so there's some, if you could live anywhere, would you stay in Silicon Valley or would you move somewhere else?
Well, let me ask you, Frank, if you could live anywhere, where would you live?
Kauai.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I think so. The only reason I don't is because of the distance to get there and family. I think that's a beautiful place. It's a magical place.
Sure.
And obviously, you do now have to start thinking about global warming a little bit. If climate change and whatnot, you're seeing a lot more things happening around the world with flooding and earthquakes and fires and all that. So definitely something to think about while you're picking your new destination. And there were some new trend maps around that recently that were put out, sharing where the spaces that may be underwater soon, or things like that. So something to think about in the definitely something to think about in the future. But you're seeing more office trends too. Oh, actually, I should ask you, where would you live?
Where would I live? I would live probably in Maine, where you're at, either Maine or somewhere out west, like Colorado or Montana, something like that. It's funny that, given it's coincidence that it's 2020, but the older I get, the more and more I kind of want to live in a secluded area. So
Yep.
yeah, just enjoying nature and everything.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Maine's a great place. I don't get me wrong, I love it. But if you're just saying anywhere, like, I think I would probably pick Kauai. It's a little warmer, but I do love Maine, and it's got some hidden gems, like you said, the nature, and the ocean is right here. And like last night, Teddy, the hurricane, finally made it up here, so there was ridiculous waves and about 30 surfers out there. Little known fact, I guess, people surf up here year round, which is pretty amazing to watch, especially in the winter.
Yeah, and I've been up to Maine a few times here, as you know, lately, and the people up there are just genuinely pretty nice. They're really, it's nice, it's clean, and so
Mhm.
I
Yep.
don't know. I'm a big supporter of Maine, but
Yep.
anyways,
So you're seeing those office trends. You're seeing more people put things in their backyards, like or expand their houses. I saw an article in was it the Wall Street Journal, yesterday or this morning, with basically saying that there's a shortage of houses, that people are literally, there's not enough houses for people to buy right now because people are moving and trying to live in that perfect place. But then also you're seeing construction going crazy everywhere. I don't know if in your neighborhood, but pretty much everyone in our neighborhood, people are adding additions or gutting houses or redoing their houses or whatever, because everyone's kind of nesting a little bit more now that this has been going on with the COVID situation for a while, and everyone wants to get a little more comfy.
oh yeah, it's booming right now, and I personally know as well. I'm involved in some construction projects, so it's pretty crazy right now. Everybody's looking for that kind of work.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some people thinking that cities like New York City may or may not bounce back. There's a really interesting article with that was put out recently saying why NYC is dead forever, basically. And obviously there was a counterpoint made by Jerry Seinfeld. So quite the debate out there. And I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's an interesting perspective and definitely one worth thinking about. So the counterpoint to that would be instead of moving into cities or moving into your perfect location, what if you just were a digital nomad? What if you just went and did whatever? Would you do that?
I really enjoy collaborating and being in person with people and using a whiteboard and figuring things out. But the more and more I've become accustomed to this recently. So I think I could do it. And, it gives you some flexibility to travel as long as you're getting your work done, obviously. But I know that you and Jen, I believe back in the day, you guys were one of the first people I think that were dubbed or used the term digital nomads. This is like probably 10 years ago plus maybe now at this point.
Yeah, we were in the Washington Post and LA Times all over because of our nomad lifestyle. And we were basically because we were working from anywhere in a time when Wi-Fi wasn't as prevalent. And, being able to do that was kind of a new thing. And it was, now here we are 13 years later, and people are doing it nonstop. We didn't do it nonstop. We just did it a lot because of the fact that we were working at a company where we could work from anywhere, and our team was on the West Coast, and we could on the weekends go other places and continue to work. So it was a different time, but yeah, it was a lot of fun doing that. I like having a routine. So I don't know. I could do it for a little while, I think, and then I want to bounce back. But I know there are some places offering, longer term commitments. So like in the Caribbean, Barbados is offering 12 months of remote work incentives to kind of attract people, which is kind of interesting. I've never seen anything like that, but that could be an interesting place to call home for a year and ride this whole thing out and see how it goes.
That does sound awesome, and I saw that as well. But there has to be some sort of a catch, right? To me, it seems too good to be true, but maybe there isn't. I don't know. By all means, right? So it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, go down there and check it out. Let me know.
I will.
Or I'll go check it out.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So let's see. We've got, there's so much news happening, and I'm just trying to dive in. There's, a lot of different things happen in the world. I don't know if you saw the Elon Musk recent brain hacking device. Did you check that out?
Yeah, I did. I didn't see a lot of it. I read the headlines. I know that they implanted a chip in some sort of an animal or something like that. So what did you find out about it?
Well, it's just interesting. I mean, the idea of our, being able to, we're turning into like Darth Vader, basically. We're really starting to combine that, or Terminator, or any of these sci-fi movies. We're living in the future, I feel like, because this is stuff that we've heard about, or, in movies for years, and now all of a sudden it's coming to life, and they're actually making advances, which is pretty interesting. I mean, this could be potentially a time where we have chips embedded in our brains, which is not something I really thought would happen. And not just our brains, maybe like, other wearables like contact lenses that are giving you data and information, and, maybe there's other places you've got implants in your wrists or whatever that are telling you things. So we live in the future, basically, and it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Singularity is coming, right?
Right. So a couple more things. Wanted to share I knew you'd love to see this one, but I mean, this is an older one. It happened a month or so ago, but it's been a while since we caught up. So I don't know if you saw the Pentagon has pretty much confirmed that all those vehicles that are out there are, not made on Earth. And so there basically came this summer confirmation that there's things that have been on Earth that are not made on Earth. And I don't know. What do you think about that, Johnny?
Well, I know that, yeah, like you said, both you and myself find this topic very, very interesting. In fact, we could have probably another podcast altogether about this alone. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the fact that I don't think that we have all the answers out there, right? And so I don't want to get too much into the conspiracy stuff here, but I think it's very interesting. And part of me also thinks that it's interesting timing as well with everything that's going on in the world, that we've somewhat been a little bit distracted by the fact that there could be extraterrestrials visiting our planet. So, and the Pentagon, or at least the government and the military, seems to be looking into it recently. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I don't know if, that was just a flippant mistake that somebody said with the Pentagon and they're going to redact that statement or what exactly, but things seem to be moving in that direction where, disclosure of something like that may be on the horizon. We'll see.
Yes, that is what I'm thinking too. I think that they're kind of trying to ease it out there and get it out there. So we'll see what comes of it. I'll be watching. I don't know if you saw yesterday, the LinkedIn put out their top startups of 2020. So right up our alley, there are 50 U.S. companies on the rise, and they all are, well, so let's just preface that with their definition of startup is not early stage startup. It could be, startup that has raised, hundreds of millions of dollars and already is on track to be successful, but it is an interesting list. So you can go check it out. One of the companies on it, I believe, is Quibi. I believe they're in that list. And I just saw an article that kind of is interesting related to them. They're out, I don't know if you're familiar with Quibi, but it was basically this, they tried to make a big splash this January. And people have been talking about it for a while, and they've got some pretty noteworthy individuals at the helm there. And basically they're trying to change people's behavior with like digesting content. So like it's a video platform that you'd watch like 6-minute shows on, basically. And so they did a big push around CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, and have made a lot of different announcements and have good talent. But at the end of the day, here we are 6 months, and $1.8 billion in of investment. And they're trying to, word on the street is they're trying to sell it. So, and it may not be a good sale. So interesting. I don't know what's going on there, but have you heard much about it?
Yeah, I downloaded the 3-month trial of Quibi, and it was interesting. I didn't understand it at first because I was like, these are really short videos. Am I just watching trailers or something like that? But
Right.
yeah, I understand they say humans have 7 minutes of that they're able to concentrate or something like that. I don't know. I could be off on that. But the point being is I tried it out. I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, I know that they're shopping it around, it seems like. And, just because they're shopping the company doesn't necessarily mean it's in trouble. I haven't looked at all the metrics as of yet, but I read the news article or the headline anyways. So it'll be interesting to see if somebody, rolls them into their platform, whether it be like a Netflix or an Amazon, something like Amazon Prime, something like that. I definitely see value there, but I'm also interested to hear how they went through $1.6 billion so quickly.
1.8 billion. But
Well,
yeah,
I saw they raised 1.8, but they still have 200 million left.
So they got a little left. But yeah, I think the whole thing bugs me because it so goes against like all the different things I've learned as an entrepreneur and startup founder, like about how to create basically create a product that people want and need and all that. And I feel like they made some huge assumptions that people want this, and without actually getting traction, rather than starting with traction and getting people on it and then going out and raising this $1 billion or whatever it was, 1.8.
Right.
So I feel like it was a little in reverse, mainly because the drivers were relationship based, right? Like, so these are big names that are behind it. And, so I hate to see this kind of story. Obviously it's a big fail, potentially could be a big failure, but at the same time, it's also like, I don't love their approach. I think they could have done it a little differently and been a little bit more successful and kind of eased into it versus like trying to make this like Hollywoodish kind of splash with like this app that is going to try to get people to change behavior, because that is the biggest thing in the world to do. That it's hard to do, right? You're changing people's behavior. You've only got, like you said, 7 minutes of attention. I forgot what we were even talking about at this point because we've been talking about it so long.
Right.
But you know what I mean?
It's a very expensive experiment, right?
Yeah, very expensive. And I feel like there's better ways to do that. But I mean, I've been at big companies, and it's a very big company approach versus a small startup approach of being nimble, getting it out there, finding your community, building it up. And it just goes against the grain of what I advise them to do, So
Sure.
It definitely struck a chord with me for sure.
Yep. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And then finally, I'm a big earth lover. I love the earth. And there's an article out on NPR recently about how big oil misled the public to believe that plastic would be recycled. So they were pushing plastic out there in the world because for those that don't realize it, all the water companies that who bottle water decided to go with plastic instead of glass or other ways to distribute that water. And ultimately now we've got this plastic problem, and the big big issue really is kind of has been led back to the fact that they decided to use this oil-based products, plastics, to basically distribute all this water. And not to mention that some of those are even bad for people to drink out of. So there's a plethora of issues around this. So go check it out. Love to hear your thoughts. And I don't know, what do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, I saw that. It's these news headlines recently have been kind of cracking me up a little bit, right? Like, big oil misled us. Oh, that's a real surprise there, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a cynic or something like that. I saw one the other day that was like, tests show that coronavirus can be spread on airplanes. I was like, have you not been around for 8 months? Like, this is the groundbreaking experiment you guys have done lately?
Yeah, no, I saw that article too. And you know what? That was based off of stuff that was like from like March or something. And it was like, wow, thanks for bringing that out now. Good timing. But I mean, do have, friends and family that are flying, so it does concern me. I haven't flown in a while, and I do feel like maybe that day will come at some point here, but I'm still a little concerned because there is, that potential.
Oh, trust me, I understand, man. And, but some of these things, I guess, are just confirming stuff that
we already know.
Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe that's a public service announcement. Maybe that's what it was for.
Exactly.
I haven't had a ton of time to watch things. I've been trying to keep up with the good old Cubbies, Chicago Cubbies just made the playoffs again for the first time in a year or so. So that's exciting. But I have been watching things. I've been trying to watch uplifting things, and obviously also being conscious about what I'm kind of ingesting from a positivity perspective. So sure. I don't know if you saw it or not, but there's a new show on Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus called Ted Lasso with Jason Sudeikis. And he's the executive producer of it. And gosh, it is one of the most uplifting shows I've seen in a long time.
I've watched it, buddy, and I call you the Ted Lasso of the startup world. That's my. He's always positive. He has a different spin on things, and it's been a really, really good show. I've enjoyed it myself. And what's interesting about it is it does have its funny parts, right? Jason Sudeikis is just a funny human being, but it also has some serious parts to it as well, And so I think it's a good mix of both. And did it win an Emmy the other night? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I think it's too new. It just came out, so maybe, I don't know. I'll have to check into that. But sure. I do know that it's just it makes you feel good. So if you're looking for something that you want to feel good and makes you want to be a better person, check out Ted Lasso, because they nailed it with that show. And I can't wait to watch the next episode. I'm now at I caught up to everything. So now it's like every Friday I'm waiting for that drip of Ted Lasso, and it goes by quick.
Same here. It's been a while because now everybody, they release most shows these days release the entire season in one fell swoop. And you're right. Now it's like old school that we're waiting every week to see what's going on in the life of Ted Lasso and the characters on the show.
So definitely encourage anybody to check it out. And it's worth that Apple Plus subscription to go look at it. Also, there's another one, HBO Max. We're going kind of random, but these random public places. But Love Life with Anna Kendrick, Portland, Maine native. Anna Kendrick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's from Portland, Maine, and she's got a program out there on HBO Max called Love Life. I watched the whole thing. It's interesting. Again, not super like uplifting, but kind of a good, chill kind of vibe. And obviously if you've been ever in love in life, you'll probably associate with some of the things, the ups and downs that she's gone through with her entire life in that show. So check it out.
It was pretty cool. I watched it as well. Did you finish the series?
Yep.
You did?
I sure did. Yes.
Yeah, it was good. It's nice escapism to kind of get your mind off of the, all of the issues in the world, to watch some of those shows. So I agree more.
And speaking of get your mind off, the one that I just watched recently is this and it's on Netflix. It's called The Social Dilemma. Mm-hmm. It's a Netflix documentary that kind of lays out the case against the bigger technology companies, and the film highlights the concerns with from former tech employees about the impact of social media and how it's basically undermining this sense of reality that we have that kind of keeps society in check. And it's fascinating. It's got some folks like Asa Radkin who was he started a bunch of companies. He was at Mozilla and Mozilla Labs, and he's actually in it. He's from Chicago, and he's been part of some of our Tech Cocktail and Tech Co events in the past. We've interviewed him a bunch, so it's good to see him on the screen. But more or less, the whole premise is Tristan Harris. He's an ex-Google employee. Shares this idea that he was working on mail for a long time and realized in doing so that we just the whole thing is like we're trying to get people to take away the time from their life to use products on your mobile apps or on the computer, which is kind of the point of like that's not the point in life. So it's kind of like we've created this reverse we're trying to create these viral loops, and we're trying to get people's eyeballs and all this, and it's actually pulling people away from what's important. And so he brought that up in a manifesto at Google, and it got a lot of people's attention, and then it didn't really go anywhere. And so long story short, he and Asa and a couple others have created this foundation, more or less, society to kind of help make sure that technology is humane and thinks about these things, and because it's actually tearing the fabric of the country apart, because people are being put into silos around politics or around things that they like, or maybe one would be around things like UFOs, which we talked about, like these conspiracy theories, right? And if you're looking at conspiracy theory things, there's all these algorithms constantly learning what you're like, and it will start just feeding you all the things that you're like. And all of a sudden you're in this like viral loop of like just things you like. And all of a sudden you've created this environment or world that's not what's actually happening in the world. So.
Oh yeah, I could definitely feel that going on in my life. I have a love-hate relationship with social media, right? Where I'll actually delete it for a week or two just to concentrate and be more present and with my friends and family and so forth. But work often requires it, and then you're also, if you do delete it, then you lose some of those connections with people as well. So it's
right.
A love-hate type of a thing.
It is. It's tough, and so I think it's just being more mindful. So after watching it and thinking about it, the biggest concern is so things like the suicide rate in children and especially young girls is through the roof. Like 10 to 14-year-olds, I think they said, is like up 120 something percent. And that is insane. Like, it's scary. And I have, a little one, and I'm concerned. And so I'm trying to be a better role model. So even ever since watching it, I put some settings on my phone to like block, the time you've got on Apple, they have the time limits on certain apps. So I'm not doing it. I'm trying to be more present. We made a rule about you can't watch or use your phone at the dinner table. We're going to institute that new rule. You can't have devices at the table. They've got to be checked at the docking station, and that includes tablets and everything. So trying to be more present in the moment, because as we're flipping through, scrolling on the auto scroll or whatever, we're losing our lives.
I could not even imagine what it would be like if there was social media when we were younger. I mean, when we were in high school and college, I couldn't, given, the real life bullying that was going on, like translate that over, another channel to be bullied. And then also, the insecurities, and when you're growing up and trying to figure your life out and who you are as a person, and having all these influences from people that are just demonstrating the best version of themselves online, and we all know that that's generally not the way it is in real life.
And there's science, John. There's science. Like, every time we get a like, we get a dopamine hit, and that's actually real. And that's like taking a drug. Like, every time we put that out there, put a thing out there, and we get likes, it's a dopamine hit. And then if we, it's way worse even if you get like a negative, comment, right? And then now you've got to deal with that, and then that's what's actually impacting a lot of the lives of these younger kids. They don't know, and then on top of it, they're following, what they think is real, maybe online, and maybe it's not really real. Like, there's so many stories. It's scary. It's something to really be mindful and think about. And so I looked up, before I started using the sensing, the time limits on my apps, I looked up, well, should I just get a minimalist phone to use? Like, should I get like a light? There's a light phone out there that's pretty cool that doesn't have like social apps and whatnot. And there's even like the Palm has a minimalist phone, but it has apps and camera. So my thing is I'd miss the camera the most, because I still like to take pictures of everything just to keep for myself, even if I'm not posting them. So that'd be the thing I miss. The light phone doesn't have it. The Palm does. But I've heard Apple put out an announcement, and they didn't put out an announcement. They did put out an announcement recently, but they have an announcement coming. Rumor says a lot of the rumor sites are saying that there's going to be an Apple announcement with new iPhones, so the iPhone 12, and then a smaller iPhone, which is going to be the size of like a Palm phone, is what they're saying. So I don't know, not confirmed, but if they do that, maybe this is going to be their thing to tackle some of these issues.
Sure. It sounds good to me. I haven't heard any of that. I mean, I've heard they have some new products rolling out, but
yeah,
no, it's very.
I've been thinking hard about it because like it's tough, and you're a model for everyone in your home. Like, and so like my little one is watching me, and I don't like that she's watching me answer Slack messages on my phone or emails, but those are work, right? But she doesn't know that. She maybe thinks I'm just playing games or whatever, and so it adds that like level of like, well, you're doing it, Daddy. You're like, well, so I should do it. And I don't love that, modeling that behavior. So I'm trying to break that habit and be a better role model.
Oh, I think we all know you're playing games on there, Frank. Candy Crush at 2 a.m.
all day long, you know it. But it's something to think about. So if you haven't checked it out, check out The Social Dilemma, and maybe join the movement to try to be a little bit more mindful and basically hold some of these bigger companies accountable, because they're just, and I'm part of that. Like I used to run, some of the product development for some of these products, social products at AOL, right? They were the early social graph. Like we had AIM, and we had the AIM live stream, and our goal was to try to get people to come check out things and share things and do all that. So I understand the ins and outs and the engineering behind it. And I'm kind of standing out there as well with them saying, listen, this isn't good for us. It's good, but it's not good it's good for, initially it was put out there in a good manner for a good reason, but it's kind of gotten to the point a little out of hand. So just like there's, back in the day when we used to watch Saturday morning cartoons, there were regulations on what could be on those Saturday morning cartoons and what kind of content could be there. And there were people watching over it. Most households, parents are putting on YouTube Kids and thinking that's cool. And there's no regulations on that. You could just put whatever you want up there. I mean, in certain as long as it fits the kids kind of demo. So something to think about. Definitely trying to make a more mindful approach to how I handle this stuff.
Definitely. Well, Frank, let's try to end on a positive note here. Why don't you give me your prediction for what team do you think is going to win the Super Bowl this year? I know that we were talking about sports a little bit earlier, and I don't mean to make this all about sports, but I'm curious as to which team thus far is.
Well, I'm a Chicago Bears fan, but I'm not really thinking they may not have it this year. There's just a little light on offense, but I haven't watched enough football to know. I definitely I always pull for Drew Brees, and obviously it's interesting to see Tampa Bay down there with Tom Brady. Boy, that's a tough one. What about you?
I agree. Well, I'm a huge Steelers fan, so I'm always pulling for them. However, I mean, the Chiefs just look good this year, and Mahomes is, just a pretty amazing athlete. I think he's kind of the recipe moving forward for what teams are going to be looking for a dynamic quarterback. I'd say Chiefs, but I don't know. The Seahawks, Russell Wilson as well. I mean, Bill Belichick recently came out and said that this may be a shot at Tom Brady as well, but that Russell Wilson's the best quarterback he's ever seen play. So I don't know. Wow. I'd say it's going to be.
But it takes more than just a quarterback. It's a whole team effort. Yeah. Speaking of football, the interesting. So last Monday night was the first game in Las Vegas. So the Raiders have moved to Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
So that new stadium was unveiled, and I used to live in Las Vegas, so it kind of was interesting. I remember hearing all about it for years, and then we recently moved, so we didn't get to take part. But interestingly, no one did. So because there's no fans, so I don't feel quite as bad. But it's interesting to see that's out there, and there's football in Las Vegas. They have another pro sports team, so I'll be watching all the teams. I'm obviously a bigger Bears fan, so I'll be cheering them on the most. But I like to pull for the underdog mostly.
Sure, and the Raiders are actually playing pretty good right now. So John Gruden has them on a good path. So
yeah.
Anyways, buddy, it was great catching up with you as always, and hopefully the listeners out there took something from all this.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for listening to the Summer Frank podcast. I'm Frank Gruber, alongside here Johnny Goodtimes. Thanks for listening. Please share your reviews. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks again, and be safe out there.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening. This is Somewhat Frank, signing off. Frank Gruber. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe online, iTunes, SoundCloud, Android, wherever you can find it. Somewhat Frank Podcast. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks so much.